abnormal lack of empathy combined with abnormally immoral conduct despite an ability to appear normal. That is exactly when you look at the criminals running our government and, you know, the Illuminati and everything. You know, they appear, they have a nice suit and tie on, and they're you know, they have this used carsman slick attitude. But when you actually look at their conduct and you look at, you know, when you really analyze who they really are through their actions, never mind what they say, you know. Like Obama, he is one of the smoothest talking guys, and he'll talk about hope and change, but then you look at what he's doing and, you know, judge a tree by its fruits, that's for sure, with him and so many of these other New World Order puppets. And, yeah, so the elite are sociopaths. And I think that's why, for one thing, when you start, for example, when you tell people that 9/11 was an inside job, okay, let's just start with that one. One of the fundamental things of the conspiracy movement. When you tell someone that who's not, you know, obviously doesn't believe it or is not in the same, doesn't have the same train of thought as someone in the, you know, truth movement would, they automatically would say, well, but why would the government kill its own people? You know, they just can't grasp the idea that just because on TV they have their nice teleprompter reading, you know, smooth talking, long-legged, you know, Mac daddies. If someone calls Obama that, anyways, you know, so on TV they come off as these really smooth talking, you know, manipulative but very used car salesman-like people. But in reality, I mean, they're just the worst of the worst satanic sociopaths by their actions. I mean, we bomb, you know, cities of civilians and kill babies. I mean, how much more satanic can you be? It's pretty hard. So yeah, I mean, it's just, I think that's why it's just so important to understand that and then, you know, people also argue, like I mentioned earlier, some people think the elite are literally have, you know, either Nephilim blood in them or have this Illuminati bloodline, and they literally are either not human or they're just a different strand than the rest of us. You know, the rest of us don't take pleasure in seeing a bombed out city with dead bodies and corpses lying around everywhere. You know, the majority of us take pleasure in spending time with our family or going to the lake and being with our friends and family. So, you know, a lot of times on my show I've noticed I do hit on some rather, you know, some dark topics, especially with sleep paralysis and abduction and demonic spiritual warfare. And I've seen people say, you know, you don't need to focus on that, just focus on the good things in life. But I mean, we really are in a war against the Illuminati, and for me to just sit there and just say everything's okay and not look at the enemy, the people that are literally just bringing us into total bondage, and just kind of say, you know, and just quote, be positive all the time. It's not that I'm trying to be negative, but it is. I'm serious. Well, I'm very serious when I'm trying to understand the mindset of the enemy, and you know, that mindset, people would also argue that, you know, there is no enemy, we're all one, but you know, I don't really buy into that kind of pacifist attitude. So I also had just some things here that kind of tie into all this. I have the book New World Order by Ralph Epperson, and I know you've all heard the term New World Order till your ears are going to start to bleed because it's so repetitive, but keep in mind this book came out in the early 90s, and actually Ralph Epperson was using that term before it became huge. You know, he was using that term to describe what the Illuminati were trying to set up before it got huge and popularized with the George Bush giving that speech. So because this term has been around for a long time. But let me just read a few things in here. So this is just kind of going into the Brave New World and Mr. Huxley. And it says, Aldous Huxley, in his book called Brave New World, quotes a character called the Grand Inquisitor in one of Fyodor Milosevic Dostoevsky's parables as saying, in the end, the people will lay their freedom at the controller's feet, and say to us, make us your slaves, but feed us. So that just goes into the idea that people are ultimately going to embrace their slavery. You can kind of see that now. When you start to point out to people just blatant realities of the way things are now, and you know, sometimes people will defend the New World Order system to the very end. They'll just fight for the people. You'll point out, you say, hey, isn't it kind of strange that these diseases are Gardasil is maiming and hurting all these young girls, and they will just totally, just chew you out for even saying that, or saying, maybe, or even something even more, something that you wouldn't think would upset people so much, saying, you say, hey, don't you think maybe there's more to life than just eating a bunch of food that poisons our bodies and gives us cancer, and going to jobs that we absolutely hate and being miserable and depressed? You can say that to people, and they will just be totally baffled. Like, what are you talking about? How could you say that there could be more to life than that? I mean, this, they just won't even comprehend it. So, another quote that he goes, okay, oh yeah, these are a few more quotes I really like in this book. I had to quote on this broadcast. First off, he said, Mr. Huxley gave us a date when we could expect these changes to occur. Changes, meaning changing into the New World Order. He wrote the following in his book written in 1958. The 21st century will be the era of world controllers. And then he told us why these controllers would not fail. This is the quote that just sends shivers down my spine. The older dictators fell because they could never supply their subjects with enough bread, enough circuses, enough miracles and mysteries. Under a scientific dictatorship, education will really work, with the result that most men and women will grow up to love their servitude and will never dream of revolution. There seems to be no good reason why a thoroughly scientific dictatorship should ever be overthrown. Scientific dictatorship, man, the stuff he says in there is absolutely incredible. If you read Brave New World, I think that's a better representation than 1984 of the future, but I think ultimately it'll kind of be like a combination of the both. But the key thing, I think, in the differences between Brave New World and 1984, which if you haven't read or looked into those, I can't recommend it enough. I mean, it's almost, I don't mean this to sound blasphemous or anything, but it's almost like prophecy. I mean, it's absolutely insane what they call it. But I mean, so in 1984, the main difference between that and Brave New World is 1984 is like a hardcore, thuggish tyranny, just like one. Sorry about that. Just hardcore, boot stomping, jackboot tyranny. But versus Brave New World is they kind of make people learn to love their servitude, and they have people on these drugs, soma, that just absolutely keeps it in line. So I think ultimately reality is almost like a comedy. We do have the hardcore police state and the police wearing these outfits that look similar to the World War II Nazi outfits. I've noticed the police cars are taken to protect and serve off. I mean, it is very scary, the police state. You have that, but then you also have big pharma and just the total zombie-like state of the American people. And I think it's like a combination of the two. But getting people grow up to love their servitude is exactly, sadly, the phase that I think we're seeing now. Like I mentioned earlier, people just defending, what we know right now to be our reality to the death. Let me throw out the call-out number again, because I'd love to hear from any of you. Area code is 347-327-9278. Once again, the area code is 347-327-9278. And this book, New World Order, I think it's great actually to read some of these books that were written, around 10 or plus, 10 years ago or even older, because for one, it's you can kind of see the inside of these people, where they talk about what they're kind of putting just based on the trends of that day, where they see the future heading, and you can totally reaffirm what they're saying. And man, I just can't advocate that book enough. New World Order by Ralph Epperson. I interviewed him. He was one of the early shows I did, which I just was so lucky to get him on the show, and it all worked out so well. But that book, what else a book? Oh, and then that book I'm reading. Then he also has a book called The Unseen Hand, which is about the conspiratorial view of history, which I'm going to be discussing tomorrow. And it's just absolutely incredible. I mean, he has like pretty concrete evidence that it's called The Unseen Hand because it's the unseen hand manipulating world events, and he does a pretty good job of showing any major event you can look at in the past. I think he starts out with like the French Revolution, which the French Revolution is key. I don't want to go too much into history now, but I'm just saying in that book it's incredible. You can see the footprints of the Illuminati, constructing up to the point where we are now. And they're very patient, I've learned. I mean, they've been setting up, the New World Order has been the goal for a long time now. And, yeah, Unseen Hand, Ralph Epperson, man, his books are really good. You go to ralph-epperson.com. And books I'm finding out more and more, I think, is the way I'm going to go. Another thing, just some news for the show. I'm going to be unable to have internet from the 10th of November to December 1st. So for one thing, I want to tell you guys all that in case anyone tries to get a hold of me if I don't respond right away. That's why. But also the show's going to, I think I'm going to try to do the show. I think I can call in and host it that way. So yeah, guys, just keep in touch. I'll still have my mobile internet, but that's pretty limited, so I can still go on Facebook and talk to you guys that way and stuff. But all right, so continuing on with the mindset of the elite, being just total sociopaths, and looking at once you can really look at them in that way, things start to fall into place and make a lot more sense. Because people need to stop, putting the way they think as the way that the elite think. I mean, to them, they see the average person is just complete cattle, and we're just in the way of the New World Order. So that's why you always see them pushing for depopulation and just draconian measures to keep us enslaved. So yeah, the different agents of the New World Order have literally infiltrated every key aspect of modern society, and I mean, there's pretty good evidence of this in literally everything. Education and public schooling has just been evolving to more and more sophisticated brainwashing. And really, it's not about it. It shouldn't be called education. It should be called indoctrination. And I mean, children and teenagers in the public school system are being hit harder than ever, with this Chinese-style brainwashing. So, I mean, they're selling this idea that humans are bad. They're making people feel like worthless animals, that we're causing global warming and we're hurting the earth. And, we know from things like the Georgia Guidestones that their goal is to, the Georgia Guidestones goal is to lower populations under 500 million, which right now we're at 6+ billion, I think almost 7 billion if I'm not mistaken. And so yeah, what better way to push ideas of overpopulation than to teach all children that humans are just basically monkeys who are destroying the earth, and that we're depleting the natural resources. And then yeah, I mean, just think about the mindset of the elite, that they would actually, you think it's not only justified, but it's a good thing to lower the population to under 500 million. And I mean, I was just going to make a point about the Georgia Guidestones, but yeah, I mean, it just shows you. Oh yeah, the point I was making. I was talking with someone about this earlier. And actually, yeah, this ties into a pretty good point of the mindset of the elite. This person left me a pretty good comment on one of my YouTube videos, and he was talking about how maybe if how do I word this the best? Well, just if kind of morals, I guess, and things like the Ten Commandments and different ideas are holding humanity back, and then the elite are just using those as ways to just dominate over us. And we had a pretty good discussion on it. So let me just read actually what I said, because I think actually he did make up some fairly good points. So he says, if there is no good or evil, only perception, then it is the stronger choice to choose a side with the Luciferians, is it not? Then I responded, I said, do you say that because the Luciferians are more in line with the whole only the strong survive social Darwinistic type of thought, the might is right type of thought? I guess you could be right, but I really do believe that there is good and evil, and I used to be a very nihilistic/atheistic person who believed that there is no good or evil, only perception. But then I said, I learned from personal experience that all that is BS, though. It is the lie of the New World Order social engineers to make us feel like cattle. They are the scum, not us. And then he responded saying, that's pretty much it. They have a lot more tools to fight with than when they are open to any method that works. Well, those that are afraid to break one of the 10 Commandments, for example, are hindered. Good is used for evil to flourish every day. And then you have those people that wait for divine intervention. I wonder how much evil has to be done before they realize that no one is going to save them. Perfect that humans don't live that long to continue really smooth talking, manipulative, but very used car salesman-like people. But in reality, I mean, they're just the worst of the worst satanic sociopaths by their actions. I mean, we bomb, cities of civilians and kill babies. How much more satanic can you be? It's pretty hard. So yeah, I mean, that's why I think that's why it's just so important to understand that there. And then people also argue, like I mentioned earlier, some people think the elite are literally have either Nephilim blood in them or have this Illuminati bloodline, and they literally are either not human or they're just a different strand than the rest of us. The rest of us don't take pleasure in seeing a bombed out city with dead bodies and corpses lying around everywhere. The majority of us take pleasure in spending time with our family or going to the lake and being with our friends and family. So, a lot of times on my show, I've no conspiracy movement. When you tell someone that who's not, doesn't believe it or is not in the same, doesn't have the same train of thought as someone in the, truth movement would, they automatically would say, well, but why would the government kill its own people? They just can't grasp the idea that just because on TV they have their nice teleprompter reading, smooth talking, long-legged, Mac daddies. If someone calls Obama that, anyways, so on TV they come off as fucking guys and he'll talk about hope and change, but then you look at what he's doing and judge a tree by its fruits. That's for sure with him and so many of these other New World Order puppets. And so the elite are sociopaths. And I think that's why, for one thing, when you start, for example, when you tell people that 9/11 was an inside job, okay, let's just start with that one. One of the fundamental things of the abnormal lack of empathy combined with abnormally immoral conduct, despite an ability to appear normal. That is exactly when you look at the criminals running our government and the Illuminati and everything. They appear they have a nice suit and tie on, and they have this used carsman slick attitude. But when you actually look at their conduct and you look at when you really analyze who they really are through their actions, never mind what they say. Like Obama, he is one of the smoothest